Hi, thanks for joining. It's Joseph Whyles here, Head of Customer Success for the UK, Ireland and USA for Applixure. I look after all of our customers in these regions, and I'm joined here today with Henry Allen, who is Service Desk and End User Computing Manager at Salvation Army Trading Company. And he's here to share some of his time, expertise and insights. So thank you very much for joining us, Henry. Today, we're going to explore in practical terms how the Salvation Army Trading Company have adopted new approaches and new tools to improve their digital employee experience and to help their IT operations to become more proactive, efficient, and ultimately more cost effective, which is really critical for the success of other non-profit organizations and local government organizations. Also, Henry today is going to share some valuable insights and tips for other IT leaders in these sectors, especially for the non-profit sector. So do stay tuned until the end of this interview session to make sure you get as much value out of it as possible. So without further ado, let's move on. Hi, Henry. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'd like just to first ask you to introduce yourself and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your role at Salvation Army.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. I appreciate the invitation here. So yeah, the Salvation Army Trading Company or SATCOL was founded in 1991, and we are responsible managing the 250 shops across the UK, Scotland, and of course the donation centres and the clothing banks. Two other elements that people are less familiar with from SATCOL is the Salvation Publishing Supplies or SPNS, where we supply a lot of sheet music to theatres, schools, a lot of industries. We also supply the uniforms for the Salvation Army officers and distribute a lot of the publications for the charity as well, such as War Cry, Kids Alive, for example. You could think of us as a kind of the corporate arm of the Salvation Army, whereby we make the money and ultimately we then donate that to the charity. For example, this year we donated them £11.2 million to enable their mission and encourage their excellent work. I joined SATCOL in April 2020. I started on the service desk to support the existing small team that we had at the time. So roll on April 21, we had a new CIO join us as Nick Harris. And following there's been a lot of changes, which ultimately saw me through to promotions to the position I'm in now as Service Desk and End User Computing Manager, where I've been for about 2.5 years now.
Okay.
So while I've been in this role, we've grown the team from 2 additional analysts up to 7 people on the team, introduced a new ITSM system, and along with that, a lot of different processes and ways of working, which all helps in our processes. There's been a few sort of environmental initiatives that I've introduced. We manufactured laptops, I think was a key one, and currently working through heat-free printers across all of our retail estate. So that's been a big win from our environmental leads.
And how important is that for you as a company on the environmental level?
It's very big. We have an annual conference, and last year was very much focused around the environment. Obviously, what we do as recycling textiles, clothing, it's all about trying to close that circular loop, reduce waste. We've got a lot of initiatives in our donation centres where we try and repair electrical items and things like that, avoid them going to landfill. So anything that we can do, all leading towards that end goal,
Absolutely.
Reducing electrical usage and things like that.
Tell me a little bit about your team. Anything else you could share just about your setup and the team that you manage?
Yes, as I say, I've got 6 people actually operating on the service desk, providing support to the organisation.
Yeah.
So we support approximately 1,200 members of staff and about 4,000 volunteers. So as you can imagine, it's quite a busy service desk. I've had 2 people which come to us through an apprenticeship scheme, and we managed to offer them full-time roles. And they've done absolutely brilliantly. So that's another great initiative. We like to develop people, grow them into the role that they want to pursue.
Okay, so Henry, what were some of the main end user IT challenges that you were having prior to meeting and working with the team at Applixure?
So I think most of the challenges we were facing are quite common in the industry from an IT user hardware perspective, namely budgets, quite tight, especially at the moment with economies as they are. So that was one. And as I said, obviously looking at new ways that we're introducing and modernizing systems across the whole organization really, but particularly around the retailers, digitizing some of the old paper methods that we're using. So some of these bits we're introducing, combined with an Office 365 migration we completed a couple of years ago, really highlighted a number of problems in shops, particularly with Wi-Fi coverage, internet connectivity speeds. That was one of the biggest challenges which we're working to overcome at the minute. So a lot of the equipment we had in the estate was quite old, a bit dated, so starting to fail, causing issues with the users being able to work effectively and efficiently. Trying to keep them going as long as we possibly could. We ended up taking parts from some to make some good ones kind of approach, because it was hard to see what was out in the world until we got it back here to get our hands on it. And sometimes it just wasn't in a state to be able to send back out.
How important is extending the computer life cycle for you and the team at Satcom?
Again, as part of the whole organization's ethos, the environmental impact is a key focus for us. So we don't like just replacing equipment where we don't have to. If we can get a lot more life out of it for a small upgrade, then we'll do that. I think typically we aim for at least 4 years from a laptop kind of thing. So trying to manage that is always a challenge with operating blind, if you will.
Yeah. So tell us more about that. Let's explain that challenge in a bit more detail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, as I say, we've introduced Office 365 a couple of years ago. So we're trying to move a lot of the management and control into Intune. So we've got a lot of information there, but actually trying to interrogate that data is quite challenging. It's not always live. Systems have to check in. They're not pulling in certain policies, not receiving certain software, things like that. It is what a pain to know exactly what all the machines are doing at each point in time. As I say, so it would often be that we'd speak to or try and connect onto each device and speak to the users to gain that insight, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, was quite slow, quite long-winded.
Yeah. Very time consuming. Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're trying to extend the computer life cycle as well, any kind of hit back from end users wanting better spec devices and things like that?
Definitely. Yeah. We've had a few users pushing back saying that what we've given them isn't suitable. There's one user basically came to us and said, I need an all singing, all dancing computer. And I said, okay, show me what you're doing. And when we went through it, it was clear that they didn't really need the spec that they're asking for, but actually to pull tangible data together to prove that and support the argument was impossible. Actually, looking at Intune, we've got some other monitoring tools we tried to leverage, but it really wasn't clear. We could tell from a technical perspective, working with the user, watching what they were doing, but actually supporting the argument with their management and higher up was almost impossible for us.
And what else had you tried doing to overcome some of the challenges we've already mentioned prior to meeting the team at Applixure with this kind of new approach to becoming more proactive at solving end user IT issues and gaining better visibility of what your end user? Are there kind of anything else that you tried previously to try to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, we'd looked at some third-party tools to try and give us a more instant view, if you will, of the estate, coming down to deployments, try and pull certain software versions, for example, trying to identify where updates are required, hardware specifications, things like that. But the challenge we had with that is that the device had to be online in order to be communicated with, interrogated. And because of the way the organization works, obviously spread right across the country, we've got a lot of remote users traveling, not on the VPN, things like that. So we got very poor data back from that. So while it helped, it had to be repeated when people were online. So again, became quite laborious.
You just didn't always have an up-to-date, real-time, full visibility of what's going on for everybody.
It was literally the point that machine was on when we last tried to communicate with it is the latest information that we have. That could be weeks ago kind of thing where it all lined up.
Henry, I'd just like to talk a little bit about how you came across the team here at Applixure and the kind of work we've done together. And I just wanted to ask you to think about when you realized that there was a better solution or approach to solve some of the challenges you just described. For example, was there a aha moment or an awakening of some kind? And so how did you know that you'd stumbled across an approach that might be able to help you?
I mean, that aha moment, as you say, came quite early on in our discussion. But just take it back a bit. So I'd never heard of a DEX or a digital end user experience platform, not something I'd encountered or been exposed to.
Sure.
So I was contacted, seemingly out of the blue, by one of your colleagues through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And asked if I wanted to meet and discuss it. And when I understood what it was, with me being end user computing manager, I couldn't really say no. So, we set the meeting up and we went through. You started showing me how the system works, some of the industry statistics. I think that was the initial meeting. And then we had an actual demo. And as soon as we started looking at this demo, I could hear the cogs turning. I was like, these are exactly the problems that we're experiencing. This gives us that solution that we need to overcome, get the data and move forwards, really.
In terms of the kind of solutions that you thought the tool could fix, was it you thought it was going to fix everything that you've mentioned, or was it there a kind of a gradual realization of the kind of solutions that the tool was going to be able to offer you?
I think in honesty, it was a slightly more gradual. Initially going through the demo and of course the trial that we set up, it was clear that there were areas we were going to be able to address quickly. But as we started using it more, the more data we're able to get, especially as we start building up kind of the history of some of the workstations and being able to leverage that, was almost invaluable. And again, the reporting that provided from the initial health check assessment was key in terms of taking this further forwards. And it really gave us that picture of the estate that we just wanted, but couldn't really get from everything we got in place at the time.
Yeah. And there's a big difference between having the data, but then having the instant visibility, isn't there? Is there anything that you could share about that topic and how the two are very different from your perspective, Henry?
Yeah, again, as you say, instant picture, it's having that client on the workstation reliant purely on the internet connection. It checks in each hour. So when we go into that platform, we look at the workstations, we know that is accurate, that's up to date, current. Whereas previously it was, when did we last interrogate that workstation? Was it online? Is it online now? Can we update that? Or if we're looking at the Intune data, it's unreliable in a lot of cases. You try and push an update to it via an Intune, it's very unclear whether it's actually run the update or whether it's still detecting the previous installation and things like that. So knowing that what you're looking at there it's game changing, really.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit about time spent trying to resolve issues using Intune and things prior to adopting sort of new approaches and tools with Applixure. In terms of kind of problem resolution, how quickly did you realize that there was going to be a big saving in time on that particular point, just out of interest?
Quite quickly. I think the key piece was finally getting it in place, getting approval for that, and getting it rolled out across the whole estate and bringing the rest of the team into it to be able to view it.
Yeah.
It's easy for me as a manager to sit there looking at thinking, yeah, this is brilliant. But until you actually start seeing the guys on the ground utilizing that system and seeing efficient it makes them, that was really the clincher for it. It's become the go-to. If somebody calls up reporting an issue with any hardware related problem, obviously that's the first place they go. They have a look, see how is the system performing, any problems with it, what's happened with it recently, looking at that history rollback, things like that. It almost tells them the next step to process that and obviously makes them so much quicker to come up with a solution.
And just to quickly go over one more time, you painted the picture about the end user wanting to have the highest spec possible device. How quickly did you realize that our tool was going to help you solve that particular challenge? Out of interest.
As soon as it tied in quite nicely because we were having these conversations at a similar time. So as soon as we got the trial running, that user's workstation was targeted as part of the trial. So we got the agent on the laptop that he was running currently, and we're able to reference the current usage of his device, which he was reporting as being heavily underspec'd and unusable. With the data we're able to pull out of the Applixure system, it was very clear that actually what they had currently was underutilized, and therefore there was no justification at all for more RAM, higher CPUs, things like that.
Sure.
At which point that was something we could present, and all of a sudden the arguments from the user and from the management above him went away.
Amazing. That's really great. Thank you very much for sharing that, Henry. And could you just tell us about anything else that's changed since you've started using these kind of new approaches, this sort of more proactive approach to solving end user IT issues with the help of Applixure? Just
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah, with the interface that you can go in and see, it highlights problems almost before the user knows about them.
Mm,
For example, where users are seeing frequent high memory usage, battery degradation, key things like that, we're able to address them. We can replace the batteries, we can organize the memory upgrades, things like that, before the user really starts to become upset with it and overwhelmed. In a lot of cases, we also found that users weren't reporting some of these issues. I think on the service desk is we can't fix something we don't know about. And previously, the only way to know about it was for them to call us and tell us it's a problem.
absolutely. Yeah.
Now we've got that, we can go in, we can see, okay, that's not good. How do we fix that? And we can go ahead and we can start doing that. It's
Yeah.
something that we have we've got some ground to go, I think, in terms of improving that process. The workflow element that we've also taken on, I think, is going to be the clincher for that. I'd love to get some integration with our ITSM tool, and we
Yeah.
can start generating tickets automatically as these devices are detected. It's just going to, as I say, it's going to be absolute game changing.
Brilliant. Amazing. Yeah. And that's a really good point to make. Are there any other plans for further improvements that you can foresee with this kind of new proactive approach at all?
It's hard to say at the moment, so we're being quite so new to it, but the service levels that we're able to provide as a result of fixing a problem before the user even knew about it are going to be massive. The relationships that's going to help strengthen across the organization within the whole IT department. Yeah, valuable really. There is very much a culture of, I think with any IT team anywhere, is the them and us, that they're telling us we've got to do this or they're not helping us with this. And if we can try and strengthen those fixed problems before they know about the kind of scenario,
Yeah.
it's only going to improve that. And then the whole relationship becomes so much better.
So, Henry, what initially piqued your interest when you found out what the picture could do to help you? Yeah, in your own words.
I think initially, as I say, I'm end user computer manager. This is an end user experience improvement function. I was like, seriously, I need to look at this. I wanted to understand it.
Yeah.
When I was presented with some of the statistics, it was eye opening, but also relatable.
Yeah.
And I think when you start looking at figures and realizing the actual impact of it and thinking, yes, at least it's not just us.
Yeah.
It's, was reassuring, but at the same time, knowing there's a solution that we can look at to try and improve and progress with that it was definitely something I was interested in learning more. And obviously we took that further to demonstrations and trials. Unfortunately, with any person in my position, it's hard to see the benefits of being so close to it, but then trying to convince CIOs, finance directors, things like that this is.
How did you go about doing that, Henry? Yeah.
Without your support, I don't think we'd have achieved it. So
Okay.
obviously the introduction of the trial, your health assessment reports that we got all went into defining the arguments. You wrote the business case for us.
Yep.
It's it all made a massive argument for it. Unfortunately, initially it was rejected.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah.
We continued working together, didn't we? And you were able to secure some good not-for-profit discounts for us,
Yeah.
which then turned it around. And we've rolled it out across the whole estate now and seen a whole picture.
Brilliant. And what do you think from the kind of decision makers that rejected it initially? What do you think was the clear defining moment that actually changed the kind of dial on this?
I think as a lot of people, again, in my position would agree, it generally comes down to the bottom line. Yeah, they look at it from a cost implication rather than a benefit to soft savings and things like that and relationship improvements and all of that type of thing. So as soon as we were able to reduce the price to a level they were happy with, combined with the reports and obviously highlighting the challenges that we're clearly having, they were able to agree. And happy to say we managed to secure a 3-year deal on that.
Thanks for sharing that, Henry. What were the key deciding factors for you that made you decide to adopt Applixure in this kind of new proactive approach to solve some of the challenges that you've highlighted so far in this interview?
I think the key one really was live data, or being able to trust what I'm seeing, knowing that it is up to date and accurate. The way that it breaks it down, you can easily see the areas that need to be addressed. Some of the key bits that we've managed to pick up on, again, are unapproved software that we're seeing on it
Yeah.
installed on devices that we don't want across the estate. So we've got some reporting on that. It's completely customizable. You can define, what it's seeing there, whether it should be or shouldn't be on the laptops. And then you can automate that through workflow, create a ticket. You're able to then go in and address that, get it removed from the system and things like that. That's one of the other things that we're also doing is system reboots. So if we've not seen a system reboot for X period of time, we can then reach out and get that user to make sure that they've restarted. And that ties in heavily with Windows updates and software version spreads as well, because if they're not updating the laptops, they're not getting the updates. And then we've got a huge spread of different versions of operating systems and
Absolutely.
other applications that we're using across the business. So they're just a couple of the key areas that we've focused on from the automation piece already, but we're seeing big improvements on that, and keeping our security manager happy, and everything is patched and up to date.
So, Henry, do you have any tips or words of wisdom for any other non-profits or sort of local government organizations, any sort of company out there that's trying to save costs and protect resources and boost efficiency out there, maybe going through a similar challenge at all?
I'd like to think so. I'd imagine anybody in my position that can relate to the situation or some of the examples mentioned here. It's key to have the right information and the right tools in place to give you that information.
Yeah.
If you can't trust or get what you need to be able to make those decisions quickly, efficiently, especially when you're being challenged for this by your management and things like that. But as well as trying to keep the end users happy and supporting your team, I think that's got to be key as well. You've got to give your team the right tools to help them do the job, keep them efficient and happy. There's always that issue. It's more money now, but I think I'm already seeing the benefit that, as I say, it's the go-to tool for my team, and the time saving and resolving any of the challenges and getting a next step on that process is beneficial. They're saving time, but we're also seeing that we're saving money because we aren't replacing equipment at the same frequency. We can see that, we can replace the battery. We can put some more memory in it. It needs an update, or hasn't been restarted in 3 weeks, or something to that effect. So we can solve a lot of these problems so much more quickly without the need for additional cost of more hardware or even visits. If we have to send somebody to some of our shops, some of those could take a lot of time, a lot of fuel and things like that. We can resolve so much more remotely as well.
And why do you think this is particularly important for other non-profit organizations, just out of interest?
I think exactly the same as I mentioned there. You're not having to replace kit. You're able to sweat the asset for so much longer. It keeps the overall cost down.
Yeah.
And there's a cost saving as well. Realistically, you don't need to perhaps have the same number of people on the desk, because they're not spending hours or even days working with end users to try and identify the problems that they're having. It's a huge soft saving in that respect as well.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much for that.
And I think it's also important to sort of continue with the relationship building as well with organizations, especially like ours, where we do have people all across the country. You don't see these people, you don't have those sorts of relationships that you would do with people in the same building. So if you can quickly and effectively help them and let them do their jobs as well, they're not spending so much time in front of the laptop trying to do a simple task, because we've given them the right kit to do that properly.
Yeah, benefits are potentially huge, aren't they? So just to bring this kind of almost to a close, and you mentioned quite earlier how important the kind of health check was in order to help to really present and build a business case around the importance of becoming more proactive and efficient at solving these end user IT issues and the kind of impact that would have on you and your team. For those potentially interested in a kind of health check and receiving a kind of impact report on the health of their end user IT environment, can you tell them anything about that process that might be helpful at all?
I would definitely encourage them to reach out and at least start that process. I don't think anybody can truly understand what their estate's doing or what condition it's in, again, without that information and that data to hand. Those reports that you pulled together from a small subset of our system during that trial process were quite eye-opening. And I think anybody, again, in a similar position would feel the same. And I think once you've seen that information, you can realize that the benefits of how this can help drive that forward and fix a lot of those problems.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Any final pieces of tips or advice that you'd like to share before we finish up for this interview session?
I think, as I've said already, just to ensure that you've got the right systems in the right place, it just changes how we view everything and how things are moving forwards.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time today, Henry. I really appreciate your time and expertise and insights that you shared with us today. I'm sure everybody who watches this video will find this very interesting and at least have some key takeaways by watching this. For any of those interested in taking advantage of one of these free health checks, I'll put my details up on this video for you to get in touch. Thank you very much, Henry. I look forward to carrying on working for you over the years to come.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Appreciate it.